Hello, it's Ms. Roberts here, and today I'm going to talk about the parliamentary debate assignment and how we're going to conduct this particular speech online. Now, it differs a little bit from my in-person class. Instead of having a live debate, we will create a series of videos where you first present the argument and present your main points. And then in a later assignment, you will defend your points and conclude your assignment. So you'll have debate 1 and debate 2 based on the same topic. What I'll do is I will compile a list of topics that I will assign students to, and then randomly assign you 2 positions, the affirmative and negative. So depending on which side you'll get, if you get the affirmative position, you will be defending the claim and the arguments of the proposition. So the proposition, in essence, is what you're arguing for. However, if you are in the negative position, then you will oppose that argument that I present. So the proposition will be labeled and available to you, and I will assign you both the affirmative and negative positions. So you will be taking one or the other, and you will be taking those positions for both the debate 1 and debate 2. Now it's broken up into 2 different pieces, and it's based on the parliamentary debates that we would do in class if we were in person. Oftentimes, it would be one big speech where both the affirmative and negative sides will speak to each other, and multiple people will present their speeches. In this course, what you'll do is you'll first do your own individual speech. You will talk about your main arguments. The outline differs a little bit from the policy speech because it's not as formatted, but you'll have the essential elements there, and you can use some of the elements from the policy speech if you like. So you have your first speech establishing the argument, just to review, and the second speech will rebuild your argument and close it out. Next, I'm going to show you the directions and give you a little understanding of the parliamentary debate process. Give me just a moment. So first, what we're seeing here is our first debate speech. So shortly, I will present or give you your topics and your positions. So I'm going to explain the positions in turn. So in your first speech, you and your opponent will be establishing your arguments. So depending on what the proposition is, and depending on depending on the argument, you're either going to be arguing for or arguing against the argument that I give you. On a side note, once we are done with both speech 1 and speech 2, you will put your YouTube videos on discussion board, and then your classmates will be able to view your videos and give a peer review, and you can do that for other students as well. So that will happen later on. Let's talk about this first speech. If you're on the affirmative side, you will first have an attention getter, similar to the techniques you will use in the policy speech. So you can start off with a question, fact, or stat. You can also define the terms in a proposition and give a review of the general arguments. So if you think about the policy speech, and in the thesis statement, we did talk about what are some of the things that we're going to talk about and give a list of our subpoints. Now, for the first affirmative constructive, if we were in a debate face to face, they will always speak first. So the responsibility of the first affirmative constructive is to build the initial argument and support it. And then later on, you will have to rebuild the argument and defend the proposition. Then you're going to specify 2 to 4 main points in your argument. So you can incorporate sources. You can specify your 2 to 4 strongest arguments. You can begin with your 2 arguments and then reserve your other 2 arguments for the second speech. But this is essentially about 5 to 7 minutes. It can be no more than 7 minutes, but you're just establishing your position, supporting what the position says, the proposition says, defining important terms, talking about general arguments, and starting off with your 2 strongest points. If you're assigned negative, you're going to be doing the opposite. Now, we aren't in a live situation where we're speaking or responding to each other. But as the first negative constructive, although you might not know exactly what the affirmative constructive were going to say, in your research, you're going to research why is the proposition supported and anticipate what they will say. Similar to what you've done in the policy speech, you answered to the opposition within the body. So you answered the opposition, you referred to the opposing viewpoint, and you had to rebuild your case and restate your argument. You're doing something similar in this process. So for your first speech, you're going to have your attention getter, ask a question, story, after stats. Then you're going to give an overview of your argument. And you can also use your own definitions that's based on the proposition I'm going to give you. And you're going to anticipate what they're going to say and answer to that. So you're going to think about why is the proposition problematic? What are the harms that are caused by the proposition? And why would the plan presented by the proposition not work? So for example, if my argument or my claim stated college students should have their student loans forgiven, it would be the affirmative's job to defend that statement and tell us why student loans should be forgiven. However, if you're on the negative side, it'll be your job to state why student loans should not be forgiven, why we're forgiving it be problematic, who will be harmed, and why or how forgiving student loans will not work or be beneficial to society. As for the affirmative, remember, the claim will be college students should be able to get their student loans forgiven. So because you're beginning the debate, you're going to talk about the reasons why that should be. Okay? So remember, the affirmative agrees with the proposition and the negative does not, and they are speaking against the proposition. So that'll be your first speech. So in between your first and second speech, you're going to finish this one, and your second and final assignment will be your closing arguments. So in our example, we are affirming that college students should get their student loans forgiven. So you're going to continue that conversation. You can either restate the argument, and because you have the opportunity to listen to your opponent's arguments, you can respond. In the first assignment, since you're the first person speaking, if you are the first affirmative speaker, since you're the first affirmative speaker, we really don't have any soundboards. There isn't really any other person that you are agreeing or disagreeing with. You are establishing an argument. The negative side in that first case or in that first debate is anticipating what you would say as the affirmative. Now it's your turn to respond. So you've heard the negative, you're going to restate your argument and directly refute the claims, similar to what we've done in the policy speech. Then you can also critique the argument. So, of course, the negative constructive, or the person who is saying the negative side, is anticipating what you're saying and responding to that anticipation. So now you get to critique their argument. Say, for instance, they are in opposition to canceling student loans for college students. So you're going to critique or say why that's not a good idea. And then if you want to provide additional information that rebuilds your case or provide additional details or examples or explanations, go ahead and do so. Now, in your presentation, you're also going to provide your closing remarks. So that'll be your recap and conclusion, similar to what you will do in a face-to-face interaction or in a regular presentation. So you have your speech right here, and you're going to conclude. So there's only 2 videos you need to do. Your first debate speech and your second debate speech. Now, if you're on the negative side, you are knocking down that argument and concluding your own. So in a debate space, just to go back a little bit, in a debate speech, the affirmative is constantly building the argument and the negative is constantly chopping down the argument. So what you're going to do is to rebuild your opposition by establishing your viewpoints, knocking down the proposition's strongest viewpoints, because by this time you would have been able to hear those first arguments and know what they're going to say. So you can tweak and address what they said in this first debate speech. Then finally, reinforce the opposition. So in the example, you will be opposed to giving college students forgiveness on student loans. So that would be the opposition. So you will reinforce and explain why that shouldn't be. And you're going to give your closing remarks. So similar to the policy speech, you will have your information and then conclude. Have your recap and then conclude. So some of the elements we've done before, but we've done on an individual basis. Now we're doing individual speeches, but you're constantly you're debating each other asynchronously. So if you think about this concept, think about YouTube for a second, or maybe even your social media debates, if you will. Oftentimes, these people might not be debating or conversing or even having straight interpersonal arguments live, right? You'll have a video, then I'll have a response video, and a video and a response video. It's almost the same concept. We have our first video with our information. You can consider the second debate speech the response or second video. At the end of, when we complete both videos, then we'll have an opportunity to post our videos on the links, post our videos, post our links, and I'll give you a format of what that will look like. And then you'll have your classmates give their opinions of which arguments were stronger, and just to give your peer reviews. And you will get to review your classmates' speeches as well. So let me do a brief recap. With the first speech debate, or with the speech debate in its entirety, we're taking a debate that we'll have in person and splitting it into 2 different assignments. Our first assignment is when we establish the affirmative argument and the negative argument. Just to reiterate, the affirmative argument supports what the proposition states. So if my argument states that college students should get their student loans forgiven, then my argument is supporting that claim. My research is supporting that claim. However, if you recite the negative and the proposition is college students' student loans should be forgiven, then you are against that claim. You're going to give reasons why. You're going to try to anticipate, hey, what would the affirmative say? Or what would people who agree with that statement, what would they say? And then answer that or answer to that. Talk about why it's problematic, talk about who is harmed, and talk about why the proposition won't work. And that's the first video. Then you're going to continue the argument. Both sides are rebuilding their case because we'll be able to see each other's case and we'll be able to respond to each other's case. So the second affirmative will be rebuilding the case. They say, for instance, if they have 4 arguments and they just presented the first 2, they can present the remaining 2 or just restate what their initial arguments were in the first place. Then, because they're able to hear the negative constructive arguments, they can critique and directly answer to those criticisms. And of course, provide more information, details, facts, or stats. Excuse me. Then in the second negative constructive, this is your time to shine. Now that you know what the affirmative speaker said in their speech, you've already had the information. You don't have to really guess anymore. You can respond to new information that you received from that first video or continue to knock down what they said initially. So you can reestablish your viewpoints, continue knocking down and proposing the proposition's strongest arguments. You can add more details yourself and reinforce your viewpoint. In this example, why should college students not get student loan forgiveness? And in that same speech, so if you could think about it as your conclusion, both the negative and the affirmative will conclude. These times are suggestions, but there are max times. So for example, you want to take about 2 to 4 minutes or 2 to 5 minutes to conclude, and you don't want to speak more than 8 minutes. So the front part of the times are suggested, but just like in debate, you don't want to go over 8 minutes for both sides. So how will you submit? So you're going to have your outline is similar to the policy speech. Upload a YouTube video, give me your links. I'll be able to look at your links and critique your assignment. Later on, make sure to not delete your YouTube videos and make sure to just keep them there at least to the end of the semester. And then after the semester is over, you can do whatever you want with them, but you want to keep them available, and they can be unlisted if you like for privacy reasons, but you want to keep them available because you want students to be able to take a look at your speech and give you a peer review. So although we're not in a class hearing each other's debates, at least you'll have an audience and at least you'll have a second set of eyes or second set of ears looking and listening to your debate that you worked so hard for. And just to recap, these are two assignments. It's kind of like one assignment broken up into 2 pieces. You have the first assignment where you establish your argument, and your second assignment reestablishes the argument and provides you an opportunity for your closing remarks. If you have any questions, let me know. There'll be opportunities for both office hour and Zoom so I can have a more interactive experience with you and we can talk about the assignments some more. You can ask me any questions. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.